Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. We are in a series on how to start a movement. And I have the pleasure through Angela Hartman, so a shout out to her. I have the pleasure of interviewing Udo Erasmus, who actually is the founder of Udo's Choice. So those of you that have ever taken flax seed oil, you can thank Udo for that because he is the one who invented the machinery that makes those oils to make those oils and enzymes and probiotics and so forth. He is an acclaimed author, speaker, and expert on total sexy health. And we'll talk about that. His books have sold, he sold over 250,000 copies of his books, including his book on fats that heal, fats that kill, which was originally published in 1993. Udo is a master in this area, and we're just so thrilled to have him here. And he's going to talk about, because he started a movement, so we're going to talk about his movement. We're going to talk about, even I know there's going to be so much wisdom that is going to come out of this conversation, far beyond the technical details of how to start a movement. So I'm excited that you're here. Welcome to Leaders Transformation, Udo.
Oh, I'm really glad to be here.
I'm also glad, and I'm also glad that our listeners are here. And, because there's so much passion nowadays for people to start a movement, to make a difference in the world. And there's a lot of like, how do we do it? How do we do it? Well, we'll throw it out on social media. We'll put our message out there. We'll do all these things. And I know that because from our conversations, you have a perspective on it, which I think is going to be very valuable for people that are going gangbusters and that are excited, but that there's a step before that, which we are going to talk about. But before we even go there, let's talk about the movement you did start and give us a little backstory. People who may not be aware of who Udo is.
Okay, so the short story on the oils is because I have a long story and a short story. The long story started when I was 6 years old, and the short story started when I was 38. So when I was 38, I got poisoned by pesticides. And how that happened is I got married and we had 3 kids, and my marriage broke up, and I was really upset, and I literally wanted to kill something. So I took a job as a pesticide sprayer, because that's what you do with pesticides. You kill things, right? And I sprayed very carelessly for 3 years. Walked barefoot over the lawns that I had sprayed till the skin peeled off the bottom of my feet. Then I wore rubber boots. I always wore a bathing suit because I was vain. I liked getting a tan in summer. And after 3 years of being very careless, I got poisoned. And I went to the doctor and said, "What do you have for pesticide poisoning?" And the lady gave me a very clear answer and a very short one. "Nothing," she said. And that was the day that the penny dropped for me, that my health is actually my responsibility. And if I don't pay attention, and mainly here, by what I eat, by what I drink, by how I breathe, if I don't pay attention here about what I give life to work with, then life can't do the job of building a body that works if I'm not willing to take responsibility for making sure the building blocks it needs to do that land in the body so it has access to them. And I started then looking into health and nutrition, disease and nutrition. I had background in biological sciences, biochemistry, and genetics, so I could read all that stuff. And I got stuck on oils because I found out, I had never learned that at university, how much damage is done to our cooking oils when they're treated with Drano, with window washing acid, then they're bleached, that turns them rancid, and then they stink. Then they have to be deodorized, or what I call destinkerized. and then we end up with an oil that is colorless, odorless, tasteless. They put it in plastic bottles. Plastic leaches into oil quicker than into water. And they're about 0.5 to 1% of the molecules are damaged, changed from something natural that life knows how to work with to something unnatural that life never made a program to break down. And if it's 1% damaged, then in a tablespoon of an oil that is 1% damaged, you get 60 quintillion damaged molecules. That's like more than 1 million damaged molecules for every one of your body's 60 trillion cells.
Wow.
And when I read that, I had a bird. I said, oh my God, I can't get healthy on oils like that. We should make oils with health in mind. So that was the little thing, right? And nobody was doing it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. Light, oxygen, and heat damage oils very rapidly. They are our most sensitive molecules, nutrition molecules. They need the most care, and we give them the least because we throw them in the frying pan and turn them into smoke. And that's on top of the damage that I just talked about. We then do more damage to the oils in the way we use them. I said, I can't get healthy on oils like that. We need to make them with health in mind and developed a method for doing that. It has to be very tight. You can't make a mess at the front end and then trying to clean it up with a chemical feast at the back end. You take the care from the beginning so that you don't get the damage in the first place. You don't want pesticides in the oil, so you have to start with organically grown seeds because the chemical feast takes out half the pesticides. The other half stay in. And I had that conversation with somebody from the American Oil Chemists Society, the umbrella organization of the oil industry. And when he said, oh, well, one of the reasons we do that, my question was, why do you do that when you know it does damage to the oil? And he said, well, one reason we do it is because we can get rid of half the pesticides in the oil. And I'd gotten poisoned, so I'm thinking, oh, you mean the other half stays in? So then I said, well, why don't you start with organically grown seeds? And I got a long silence at the other end of the phone. And then when he got back, I waited. I'm good talking, but I'm also good listening. So I waited. And when he came back, he was really angry. He says, I don't know what your problem is. The oil is still 99% good and it's only 1% damaged. And if you got 99% on an exam, you'd be damn happy, wouldn't you? That's what he said. And of course, I was in genetics and I loved genetics because you're in the control room where life creates everything. That's how we thought about it in those days. And so I used to get 100% on my genetics exams. So I wasn't impressed with the 99 like he was. So, but then I thought, well, maybe I'm overreacting. And when in doubt, there's a saying, when in doubt, do the math. How many, so the question was, in a tablespoon of oil that is 1% damaged, by the way it's processed by industry, how many damaged molecules you're going to have in that tablespoon? And that's where the 60 quintillion came. In 1 tablespoon, more than a million damaged molecules for every one of the body's 60 trillion cells. When I ask people how many damaged molecules they think might be in a tablespoon, they always give me numbers that are at least 1 billion times too low. Because nobody can imagine that you could have that many damaged molecules in a tablespoon. And then I tell them, well, if you realize you just underestimated the damage you're taking in by 1 billion times, then here's a question for you. If you're going to get on an airplane and you find out on good authority that your chance of crashing and burning in your next flight are 1 billion times higher than you thought it was, would you get on the airplane? And it's like, whew, maybe that. And why I say that is getting the numbers and realizing that you're underestimating by 1 billion times the damage you're exposing yourself to. Is that enough to make you change your oil intake? Your body needs an oil change, just like the car is what I say, right? Is that enough to convince you that maybe you need to pay attention to that?
Yeah.
Damaged oils cause more health problems than any other part of nutrition.
Wow.
And making the change to good oils or to the seeds that contain them will get you more benefits than any other part of nutrition. So that's the short version of the oil thing. And then what happened when I realized that oils need to be made with health in mind. The second thing that happened, completely not in my control, the year after I got poisoned, it was established that omega-3s are also essential nutrients. It was known for omega-6, but not for omega-3. And at that point I said, oh my God, it's like 99% of the population doesn't get enough for optimum health. Every cell needs them. They're a nightmare to work with because they're 5 times more sensitive to damage by light, oxygen, and heat than the omega-6s. And if we could bring them back and optimize them in people's diets, oh my God, we could help so many people. And that's when the fire broke out in my heart. He said, oh, we could help so many people. And we were on fire. And then we went out in a van without air conditioning in the hottest months of the year, 37 states, 17,000 miles by road, 85 cities in 101 days. And we talked to everybody who would listen, anybody who had ears. Even if they had their thumbs in their ears, we would talk to them. And within 2 weeks, within 2 years, flax seed oil, which was the richest source of omega-3, became the second highest selling oil in the natural foods trade. Because that's where we were operating. And we were just on fire because, oh my God, we could help so many people. And there's just something that feels really good when you actually help people, when you can make life better for people or life better for animals or life better for plants for that matter. There's just something that feels so good to the heart when when you can do that. And that was the drive. That was the driver.
Yeah.
Just, oh my God, we could help so many people.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and now your products are sold all over the world and you
are
making that impact.
We're a long ways from a bottle in every fridge was my goal.
Yeah, and that'll come.
Yeah. So,
well, let's talk about, so that's been massively successful. You created a huge impact, and then you went beyond that. As amazing as that is and as accomplished, and you can feel like the satisfaction when I say that. I mean, feeling the satisfaction like I've made a difference in the world.
Yeah.
But that wasn't enough. And you wanted to go beyond that.
Right.
To, talking about total sexy health. And maybe you can talk about why you called it total sexy health as opposed to just total health.
Okay.
Like that.
So,
but it's also like talk about some of the elements of that. So that's a much bigger game, if you will.
Okay. So I got poisoned by pesticides. That's what got me into oils. But I also came out of the Second World War. I was born during the Second World War in what is now Poland, was then Germany. My parents came from Latvia. They left Latvia when Hitler and Stalin made their pact, and Latvia went to the Soviet Union, and part of Poland was given to Hitler, even though there was nobody from Poland or Latvia at the meeting. So they basically took it because they were big and they could just bully them. So my parents left and ended up in Poland, which was then part of Germany, because they loved Russians as human beings, hated communism, because communists took everything away from everybody. So they left and got land in Poland to replace the farms that they gave up in Latvia. And I was born during that war. I was 2 at the end of the war when the communists were chasing us in tanks and trucks. My father was in a prisoner of war camp. My mother was alone with 6 children, under 6. And the communists were coming from, let me get this right, from the east, chasing westward. And we had to take off from Poland, try and make it into Germany because we had German background. And the Allies were shooting at us from planes on the roads we were traveling on. And they knew that we were refugees. They were just using us for target practice. So, war on both sides is not a good idea.
Nobody wins.
So I was 2, and I don't remember much other than the fear and the anxiety. And eventually we got into Germany. And I was watching people argue in Germany, and I was 6 years old by that time. And I was watching them argue about things that seemed really trivial, even to me, as a 6-year-old. And the thought went through my head is like, there must be a way that human beings can live in harmony together and I'm going to find out how. That's been my driver all my life, even before the oils. That's my driver. And that question really got me interested in everything. I mean, literally everything, in terms of science, in terms of religion, in terms of sociology, anthropology, in terms of nature, in terms of, I mean, literally. And I was always looking for, what does it take for human beings to live in harmony? Because there is something in us that is harmonious.
Yes.
That
What
is
did you
one.
find? What did you find?
That is one with the energy that created us. That's one with God. That's one with life. That's one with whatever you call that. And if we take our awareness from out there, where it's always wandering around, looking at this and looking at that, and being attracted to any change that happens, and take it out of here, where we collect all that information and bring it deeper inside, in the core of our being, there is a peace that is unshakable. There is a peace that can never be unpeaced. And that peace is actually everywhere, but only peace can see it. So if you think about it, so if you can't see peace, it's because peace in you is not looking. So fundamentally, if we live fully present in all of our being, all the way to the core of our being, then it's a different life. It's a different experience. There's a contentment there. When we get disconnected from that, we become discontent. And then we're always trying to find our way back. But if we don't remember that the discontentment comes from a disconnection from the core of our being, then we're going to look for ways out there to get our contentment back. And that doesn't work.
Yes.
And it isn't until we bring our awareness back to the core of our being, where God lives, where Jesus lives, where Buddha lives, where all the masters that all the masters talked about. Mm-hmm. If we go back to that, if you live in that place, it is possible to live in harmony. It is possible to live in love. It is possible to live in peace, because it is embedded in our nature. But you don't know that if you never go there.
And where does that disconnect happen?
The disconnect happens right after we're born, because when you're in your mother's womb, there's not much going on. There's not much to go to, because everything is taken care of, right? It's safe. It's warm.
Yep.
There's not much sound. There's a little bit of sound, gurgling, and a little bit of vibration of voice and stuff, but there isn't anything to go out to, and everything is taken care of. So we're hanging out. I call it the Buddha tank, right? The womb is the Buddha tank, and we're just hanging out. And our awareness is at rest in its source, in the core of our being. When we come out into the world, that ends. And now we got to start learning how the world works. And our awareness is drawn out through our senses into the world. And in that process, we get disconnected from our core and get connected to the world of surfaces of things. And that disconnect, so now we started present inside, absent outside. Now we're present outside, absent inside.
Got it. Yeah.
That's where the disconnection begins. And that's part of the human journey. Plants don't take that journey. And animals will go out, but they'll go back to their heart. We go out and then we go back to our mind. And our mind is a substitute reality. It's not real. It's just representation of reality, but isn't real itself. So we need to go back to the core of our being. And that's not an automatic process. Going out is automatic for human beings. Going back has to be deliberate, because there's nothing in the core of our being that's saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, to pull our awareness, to attract our awareness to. Except one thing. When we get disconnected, there is an ache in our heart. And that ache is the call to come home. Now, we think of that ache as being lonely and looking for a woman or a man or looking for something else. There's so many things that we substitute for just coming home. And when we come home, because we never lost anything, only our awareness wandered off. And when we come home, we feel whole. When we feel whole, we don't steal other people's stuff. And when we don't steal other people's stuff, we can live in harmony together. In fact, we can do more. We can make sure that everybody's needs are met in a long-term, sustainable basis. And that's the journey. That's the human journey. You know, you leave home, whether you're talking about the prodigal son or you talk about the expulsion from Eden, you know, and every society has or the hero's journey. Every society has some story like that.
Yeah.
Their stories you can interpret externally and internally. I think to get back to the core of our being, it helps to understand the journey internally, right? The disconnection of awareness from our core and wandering off into the world, and then trying to fix it by making more money or having more girls or doing this and doing that or stealing this from that country or whatever all the crazy things are that we do. There are misguided attempts to get our wholeness back.
Yeah.
If I have more money, I'll be happier. No, you won't. You'll be just as unhappy with more money, right? So because wholeness is a biological experience. It's an experience of the life force or the God or the energy, whatever you call that. When you're in touch with that, you feel whole because you are built that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the origin of where my big project comes from. And literally I went into sciences and I did all the different things I looked at. I was always looking for what is that thing that we need to understand so we can live in harmony together. But it's harmony with ourselves.
Yeah.
And out of that, harmony with what's around us. That's homework, right?
Yeah, I think of the unifying, the harmonizing, the building bridges. Oh, that's still external, and we first need to work. What I'm hearing you say is we need to work inside.
Yeah,
and that's like I wanted to change the world, and then I realized, maybe I would just start with my country. Then I realized there's some quote or somebody said this, and then well, maybe I'd start with my city, and then my and then I realized my family, and it's like I eventually realized that it's just
it's myself.
Be the change.
Well, because whatever state of being we're in, discontent or content, whole or not whole, whatever state of being I experience automatically comes to expression outwardly.
Yes. So that's really the ripple effect that we put out there.
Right. Yeah. And you can't be discontent and then be teaching contentment. I mean, you can try, you can do the words, you can do the words, but contentment is a state of being. It's a feeling. It's an experience.
Yes.
And when you're content, just like, if you're with somebody who's paranoid, pretty soon you're looking over your shoulder, looking for some enemy, right?
Yes.
But somebody who's calm, you feel the calmness. We are subject to what's going on in our environment, but we are also masters of what's going on internally, should we choose to take on that challenge. But it's a challenge because our senses will always draw us out, and we have to deliberately decide that we want to go back and reconnect to the core of our own being, where all the goodies are.
And this is really timely for this start of this this series on, being a movement maker, because like you said, everything, who we are, what's inside is going to become an expression on the outside.
Right.
And
You
so we
can't,
work.
you cannot but express your state of being.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where we get the movements. It's like, I love Mother Teresa, her saying that, if you invite me to an anti-war rally, I'm not going to show up. If you have a peace rally, I'll be there.
Yeah.
And it's because of what we see, a lot of people who are, and movements out there, and they come from that place of anger and that place of upset and that place of wrongness.
Yeah.
And they get followers and they enroll people in that. But then what are they actually fostering in that process is more anger. And then of course, more anger and peace don't match up. So we're getting less peace. We're getting more fear. We're getting more angst. And that goes for,
actually, I was in the peace movement. They called it the peace movement. It was an anti-war movement. And for a while I was there, and I realized, actually, when I realized that this was not about peace, it was about political maneuvering, and it was about certain ideologies. It was not a peace movement. It was a trying to get power movement. And when I realized that, I left. Because I was actually looking for peace, because I was born during a war, and the peace was always a theme for me. What is peace? Well, the point is that the peace that you're looking for in the world is already inside of you. It's the core of your being. It's complete peace. So you want to have peace. You can't control everything on the outside, but you have the option and the ability to go to the peace that is the core of your own being. And then from there, you may influence other people. You may not. You don't have power, but you will be an influence, right? And in terms of movements, I think starting a movement is not a smart goal. The movement, the movement comes out of a different state of being. You're missing the point if you're doing a peace movement, because then you start thinking, well, how can I manipulate this, and how can I this, and then you're already in a place of no peace.
Yes.
Then you're already in a place of agitation. If you're in peace, you will be an influence for peace wherever you go, in those moments when you're in the peace that you want to be in, right? Because you're not there all the time either. Yes. I mean, I'm not accusing you. I'm talking generally. We are.
Yeah.
So rather than the movement, what kind of a person do you want to show up as? Right? You can, and it's not in the words, but in the state of being. It's not in words, it's in an experience. If you want to be, a peacemaker, peace has got to be your state of being, right? And then out of that state of being, you can maybe help people a step along their way of finding their peace in the situations you're in, but you can't make anybody go there. But you could maybe inspire somebody to go there, because if you living in peace is more sexy or more exciting than whatever state they're living in, that's attractive. And people, there's something in us that wants the best.
So talk about this. This is a really great point. And this is being released at the beginning of our series, of course. And now we're doing a whole series on how to start a movement. You're like, don't start a movement. Perfect.
The movement is a natural outcome of your state of being.
Yes.
Because the truth is we're all in movements. We're in war movements, and we're in stupidity movements, and we're in ignorance movements.
Amen.
They're all movements, because state of being is state of being. And whatever state of being you live in, that's the kind of movement that you're creating.
Yes.
Right?
Now talk about the distinction, because when you were on fire about oils, and you went around the country in 101 days and had all these, you were like on fire and going out with the message. What we're talking about here in terms of peace is being it embodying it and drawing people in. How do you balance the two in, you know where I'm going with this, right? It's like, how do we balance the two in making that impact?
I don't see them as different.
Okay.
Because I was on fire for the ability to help so many people with their health. And even when I was doing it, I knew it was my small project. But I was just a kid, and I came from a family that was pretty messy. And, I wasn't sure that I could do the big picture. So I decided to cut my teeth on the smaller picture, and oils were the smaller picture. And now,
in perspective, now people would say, wow, it's a big picture, but in relative to what you wanted to do was a much smaller picture. Yes.
Right. I mean, it's oils made with health in mind is relatively big in the arena of nutrition. But what I'm talking about now, I call it Total Sexy Health, the book on Total Sexy Health. Sexy, because sexy is the power word. You might as well do that, yes. Right? Sexy is the power word. And as everything is sold as sexy, why not use sexy to sell people on themselves? Because what is sexy has more to do with, it actually has more to do with presence and spirituality and upliftedness and, being really present than it has with genitals.
Yes.
Right. And in fact, that's why we talk about sexy architecture and sexy art and sexy explanations. They have nothing to do with sex, but sex is an energetic.
Yes.
And it's used way beyond the physical function.
Yes.
And so the idea was, well, everybody's being sold everything on the basis of sexy. I'd like to sell you on yourself on the basis of sexy, because that's really where it belongs.
I love it.
And that's why it was called the book on Total Sexy Health, the 8 key parts designed by nature. And it's a bigger picture than oils, because oils are, I would say, maybe 1/15 of the physical part. But when you talk about the whole picture, you're talking about awareness, then you're talking about energy, then you're talking about inspiration, then you're talking about physical. That's where food and fitness come in. That's usually what we limit health to, but actually all of them play a role in health. Then it's survival smarts, then it's social, then it's nature, and then it's big picture, God, or whatever, the God, the field, or whatever you call the designation of everything that your body is a very small part in. But all of them you are connected to. All of them are part of your nature. And so that's a huge undertaking, because it's really about transformation of the human race, at least human consciousness. Because when you look at the world and all the problems in it, we are the source of most of them. And our disconnection from ourselves and our discontentment that comes from that are the driving force behind all the damage that we're doing to the environment, in our social relationships, in our political lives, and there's plenty of that showing up, right? In our health issues, because living out of line with the natural system, right?
Yeah.
And everything that's not working comes from us not working, and us not working comes from not being fully present in all of our being. And
so does that start at the beginning? You talk about awareness. Obviously, it starts to start with awareness. Those circles, are they in sequence?
Yes. Yeah. Well, in sequence.
In terms of the way that you actually apply them or focus on them. If somebody says, I'm not experiencing total sexy health right now.
Yeah.
And so beginning is awareness.
Yeah. Well, I would say it this way. Because we're confused, we just do the one we do. But if you really look at it from from the whole picture and without confusion. The first thing is the core part, the deepest part of you. That's where we mostly don't look. That's where our disconnection begins. So we're disconnected from the awareness of awareness. Some people call that God, awareness of awareness. We're disconnected from that. We're disconnected from life energy. Some people call that Christ. We're disconnected from inspiration. And if you're not inspired, you're heading in the direction of depressed. And that's an extension, by the way, of the life energy.
Yeah.
Those three, and the big picture, which is, those are the areas that we are most ignorant about. Those are the areas that are least physical, therefore least physically visible, and therefore most easily ignored, even though they have much more power in a human life than all the things we pay attention to. Mm-hmm. So the physical is less power than the life energy. In fact, if you separate life energy from the body's for dirt, right?
Yes.
Then the water goes, and the dust goes, and the oxygen goes, and so the energy that is life, and that energy you could also call Christ. And I could do the whole derivation of that. You could also call it sunlight. That energy is the power that runs the show. And we tend to think of it, in science, because it's physical based more. That's slowly changing, but it's physical based more. We tend to ignore all that.
Yes.
Even though without that power, there's no form to study. We call it biology. Biology means study of life. The only thing we never studied in biology was life. We studied form and function. And when I started, I thought, biology, the word means bio is life and ology is study of life. My parents taught us Greek and Latin roots, so I would do words that way. And I said, oh my God, I get to study life. I got into biology. The only thing we didn't study was life. In psychology, study of soul. The only thing we didn't study in psychology was soul. We studied mind, but we didn't study soul.
Fascinating.
And in medicine, I thought we were going to study health because it's called the healthcare system, but they only study disease. I was learning more about health in biology than I ever did in medicine. So I only lasted a year because I was so disappointed that we weren't going to learn what health is. Because I thought if somebody's sick, and you know what health is, then you say, okay, there's health, go there. And you could just give them a push and get them better. But you can't do that if you don't know what health is, because you don't know where to send them. And then I talked with the dean. He said, we don't know what health is. We're working on it. But they're not even working on it because they make their money on disease. You neglect yourself until you get sick, and then they patch it up. That's not healthcare. That's disease management. Yes. We call it healthcare. So fundamentally, what is most important in human life is not taught. And then if you go into religious studies, because you think maybe you go there, then you get all kinds of interpretations. And I want to have the experience.
Yes.
I want to be in the experience.
And a lot of that is still in the head.
What?
When you go into religion, a lot of it's still it's in the head. It's man-made structures and all of that, of interpretation. Right. And interpretation is interpretation here. Right. Experience is here.
Right. And you can memorize the scriptures and they're still be just in your head. But my question would be, well, what was the experience that the master had that he was talking about? I want that experience.
Yes.
Why is there a reason why I couldn't have that experience? He never said I couldn't.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would basically read God the Riot Act, so to speak.
Reread it, and because even it does say that we could. Right?
Well,
you will do these things and more and greater things.
Again, and I would say
most people don't read it.
And I would say if they could understand all this because they were born at that time and I was born at the wrong time, that's not fair.
Yeah.
You know, I'm living now and I need my experience now. And
Yeah.
so I was pretty obstreperous about that. It's like, and I don't know why fair, but who said it was, and then it turns out that if you actually read the words and then look for the experience, there is an experience to be had.
Yeah.
And if it's not experiential, then it's just a head trip.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we claim as religious is just head trips.
Yeah.
And then behind those head trips, we do all kinds of really atrocious, life hostile things.
Yes.
And there's just something wrong with that.
Yeah. In the name of God, he's been accused for a lot of things.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's true.
Which have nothing to do with him. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then to be fully present in all of your being, and in the world, that's the cherished state. Not in your head, lost in your head in concepts, but fully present in the experience of being alive.
So how do you do that when, like, so I know that when you talk about this kind of, these kind of concepts, it's more popular now than it was back in the day. But even with your fats and, you know, the oils, and you start talking, like you mentioned about the guy, the head of the association, you run up against resistance and or ignorance, or just flat out somebody just doesn't want to know the truth. How do you stay in that space when you're in the midst of all that and you're saying, well, can't you just see it? Can you just see what we're doing here? And you want to make that change, and you know the change that needs to happen, and they're not getting it.
Well, I think the really lucky thing for every human being is when it comes to going internally into that experience, there's nobody there to keep you from doing it.
Yes.
It is fully open, other than by your own ideas. Right? So the only thing you're fighting is ideas, most of which you picked up from other people, because most of them aren't even your own ideas. So the journey out of your head to your heart is completely open to you, and the longing that you feel in your heart when your heart feels empty is the call to come home to your heart. That's the call, right?
Yeah.
We're not clear about that. We think, oh, it's my girlfriend dumped me, or, you know, whatever it is that makes a heartache, right? But it's actually, that's a trigger for your loss of yourself that happened a long time ago. If you understand that, you would want to sit with this emptiness or this longing or this heartache that you feel, or this loneliness that you feel. Sit with it and slip behind it, because that far behind it is what you're looking for. It's so close. It's so close. You can't even measure how close you are. And I started feeling that when I was maybe 16, 17, and I couldn't shake it. It didn't matter. I couldn't find distractions for it. Usually what we do is we distract ourselves. We do something. Don't sit there, just do something. And what I realized eventually is, no, when you feel it, sit with it, because it's not going to hurt you. It's going to bring you, it's going to bring you home. It already gets you out of your head. When your heart aches, you're already out of your head. That's like 99% of the challenge, is just to get out of your head. So sit with the ache. And then not only, you know, you give 8 hours to your job, you give 8 hours to sleep, you give 4 hours to eating. How much time do you give to your existence? Oh, about 0 most of the time. And I'm saying, no, take time to do nothing, just to be. Because in doing, you lose your sense of being easily. Not always. You can do and be at the same time, but generally
start
speaking,
with the be.
Yeah, we're not very good at doing both. So make time to be. Do nothing. At least you're not screwing anything up when you do nothing. Okay, so spend some time just being. And what does it feel like? And really get present. And if you need a method, then learn a method. but at least begin to be okay with feeling the emptiness of your heart. Because your heart is actually full. You feel empty because you're not in it. Right? Your heart never is empty. Your awareness, it goes away from it. That's the whole fall of man, is just awareness wandered off.
Yes.
In this direction, that direction, some direction. And the redemption, if you want to use religious terms, I don't use them all the time, but it's as good a language as any. The redemption is coming home to your heart.
Yes.
And there is everything you've been ever looking for, you already always had. That's the joke. That's the big joke. Everything I've been looking for so studiously everywhere has been behind my looking. Right? And so, but it helps if you take time for being.
Yeah, and our world doesn't allow for that, doesn't encourage that. Social media, you wake up in the morning and you grab your phone and right off the bat, and who liked my post, how many likes, and all of this. It's done such a it's been a wonderful blessing for connecting with people around the world.
Yes,
I think it's a tool,
but not a good tool for connecting to yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So I say to people, Google gets you everything except yourself.
Oh, that's good.
Right?
You were very quotable, by the way. I will just tell you.
Yeah.
As I was watching your videos and I'm listening to you here.
You can have them all.
You were very quotable. Yeah.
So, and it's like, but the thing is, people sometimes say, well, is it harder now than it used to be because now we got so many distractions? No, you only need one distraction. You could be a monk in a monastery and you're looking out the window and a woman goes by and there goes your experience of God. Right? So it only takes one distraction. Do we have more distractions? Yes, but you only need one. So whether you go out to this one or that one or the other one, the thing is, there's only one way to be present. And you only need one way to be distracted. Even though you have a million to choose from, the distraction only takes one movement, right?
This is actually a really great point, because with the growth of the yoga movement and the meditation and all of this, these are again all tools. And I love what you said there, because what I've noticed is that, and I get clients that come to me and saying, what do I need to do more of? And of course, this very question indicates it. What the real question is, what do they need to do less of? And so that they have time to actually be.
Right.
So,
be
but
more,
I find
do
that,
less.
Yes. And what I find is that a lot of times people start to idolize the method. Like, I have to go to yoga class so that I can actually experience that, or I need to meditate, whatever their form of meditation is. I need to do the thing I need to do in order to be. And you can be anywhere. You could be sitting right here and just stop and be. We don't have to go anywhere to create that experience.
Right. Because
and so there's no limitation. It's not like I need to earn more money so that I can take that time to be. I can just be right now.
Yeah. So in the depth of your being, you are that experience.
Yes.
So whatever gets you to the depths of your being, and depending on who you are, maybe you need to sit down and maybe you need to do a formal structure, or maybe you've learned something. But the danger is that you may get more focused on the structure than on the experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's always and then if you
and then you leave the yoga, right? And then you go out, and then you know.
Then you leave the yoga, then you leave the experience for the form.
Right. Yeah. And then you go out and then you flip somebody the bird on the road on the way home.
Exactly.
Because you left your piece there.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's very, very easy to do, because it's so very easy for our senses to go out into something that isn't presence.
Yes.
Right. So it's very, very easy to do that. one thing that happened to me, I got to say, was very, very helpful. Long time ago. This is like I was in my late 20s. And I went to, I was studying the New Testament because it occurred to me one day that they're still talking about Jesus 2,000 years later. Nobody remembers my grandfather. He's not been dead for 50 years. What is the difference? And I thought that was like a logical problem to try and get a bite on. And so I was thinking about that, and I was reading the New Testament, and I was taking little things and putting them to the test, because and I took some risks, and remarkable things would happen. And then I decided that I was going to go in with a group of Christians that called themselves the Jesus People's Army, long time ago.
Yep.
And I thought they must be looking for the same thing I'm looking for, so maybe I can learn something from what they've discovered. And I went in and I sat down. They had a coffee house, and I went and sat down at a table, and this guy swooped in next to me, and I said, "It must be possible to see God and live." Because somewhere I had heard you can't see God and live, but there were people in the Old Testament and other places where that saw God and lived. So why is that not possible for me? Mm-hmm. The guy who sat down beside me, he just started yelling at me. He says, "You're from the devil. You're from the Antichrist. Get out of here." So I went. So I crawled out of this place, just was completely confused, and and I thought, okay, I haven't seen God, so maybe I'm asking the wrong question. No, I was just like a little kid. I was 29 or something, but I was really confused. And so what I did is I hitchhiked to the west coast of Vancouver Island. That's where I would go when I was confused. I'd go into nature just to clear my head, because nature has a remarkably peaceful way about it. Not like people with their concepts and their angers and their emotions and all that stuff. So I went to this place and I slept on the beach for a few nights. And somebody had draped plastic over logs on this West Coast beach. And I said, okay, well, here's my home for while I'm out here. And I went to sleep, and I woke bolt upright in the middle of the night. And there was a being there made of light, and with a message, although the message was not in words, the being was the message. I could put words to the message, and the message was, "I am come not to judge, but to love." Mm. And then, of course, then I started thinking, well, what was that being? Is that life, or is that Jesus, or is that an angel, or is that, and it didn't have something written on its forehead. So fundamentally, it was all of the above. And that message, when I heard that message, first of all my confusion was gone. I am come not to judge, but to love. Yes. Totally got what was the message of the master. And it was really profound. Mm. And so to me, if I have a slogan, I would say that I am come not to judge, but to love. I think that would be a message of a human being who lived in the presence of the master being life, that thing that loves you unconditionally, day and night, never asks for anything back, never judges you, never beats you up, right? That's the message of life to the world. I am come not to judge, but to love. And that was very profound for me. Then I tripped on it for a long time, and just learned a lot just from that one experience of to put all the teachings and all the religions and all of the stuff that we make important, to put that into perspective. Because if all of the people on the planet lived by that, this would be heaven on earth.
Yeah.
I am come not to judge, but to love.
Yeah. That is heaven on earth.
Yeah. And there
this
is
is so good.
And there is no reason why however many people there are on the planet, right? There's no reason why that could not be the guiding principle of every human being on the planet, whether they're in politics and whether they're in the police force and whether they're in jail. That is the message of life for every human being. Because we are loved unconditionally.
Yes.
By life.
Yeah.
And then out of that,
so
okay,
good.
and then out of that,
yes.
What do you think the kind of world we're going to live? What the kind of world that we're going to build out of that experience? Out of living that experience into the world. What do you think? What kind of a world are we going to build? It's not the world because we didn't build the world we have over the past how many years it's been around, and we've been around. That's not what we built the world.
Is that your legacy? Is that what you want to leave?
Yeah, that's the legacy, right? There must be a way that people can live in harmony, and I'm going to find out how. And there it is. And it's already in everybody.
Yeah.
Because it's your life. It's your life. It's the life that is more you than your body is.
Yes.
It's the life that lives your body. It's the life that takes care of your body. It's the life that runs the whole show. It's the life that is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient within you.
Yes.
So we have that all built in. It wasn't like, I'll have that if I say this ritual and say, oh yeah, I accept blah, blah, blah. It's already in everybody. But we need to go to it. We need to be quiet. What I say is get quiet. Feel what it feels like to be alive. See how long you can be quiet. See how deeply quiet you can become. What does it feel like to be alive? In that, with a little practice, you get to have an amazing experience. And out of that experience, what if you lived that experience into the world? Instead of, I'm really pissed off at blah, 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 and, right? What if we lived that into the world?
Yes. Because
there isn't any reason why we can't do that.
Yeah.
Because we already have it within us.
Yeah.
The master life already lives inside of every human being.
Yes.
Make friends with the master.
Yes. It is the air we breathe. It is everything yes. Udo, this has been so good. I could listen to you for hours, and I'm sure our listeners are captivated as well. We are going to wrap up, and I'm going to encourage our listeners to go to your website. We have a link, which we'll make sure is also in the show notes. It's udoerasmus.com, and you created a designated page so this is /leaders. And that's where they can get the book on total sexy health. And you have some wonderful additional videos, which I've watched, which are profound. Those are teachings that you're going to want to go back over, and just it'll give you some things to marinate on. Hopefully not all up here. It's here. It's showing you how to get, back to here. And just really amazing.
This is supposed to be the servant of the heart.
Yes.
So if you're connected to the heart and you are the heart, then this helps you with the words to bring it into expression. If you're going to bring it into expression in words.
Yes. Well said. Yes.
If your heart runs your body and heart runs your mind, that's a good sign of something.
Yes. Well, and I get that sense that it does for you, and you have this ability to be very present and very at peace, and you embody that, and you actually it's interesting. The previous guests that I had on the show, we were talking about shifting atmospheres, shifting environments. You are like that. You shift the
Yeah.
environment. When you go into a room, you shift it just simply by
Yeah.
who you are.
Yeah. Not bad for a war baby.
That's true. That is true. Udo, thank you
But
so very
but
much.
even the war was a gift because it actually made me look.
It made you aware. Yes.
Yeah.
Of that.
It,
Yeah.
it made me say there's got to be something better.
And that's where I think our the painful experiences that we have in our life are that gift. Because like you said,
Are huge gifts. Yeah.
they get us back to that
Yeah.
place. So
Yeah.
really awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so very much. Thank you also to our listeners for being here. Again, we're going to have the link in the show notes, and I would highly recommend that you follow Udo and what he's doing. Just imagine for a moment if we all came from that place and we all experienced and it went inward, everybody in the world. That was just such an incredible vision. And that
lit
is
up, lit up from within.
lit up from within.
Live lit up
Yes.
from within.
Yes, absolutely. We'd love to hear your stories. You can go on leadersattransformation.com, share with us your comments and your questions and also what you're doing. Well, how are you making an impact in the world? How are you desiring to make an impact in the world? If there's something we can do to support you along that journey, please let us know. We have access to a lot of resources and a lot of amazing people that we've had on this show and the network that I have that can support you. I'm pretty sure that whatever it is that you need in order to do what you're looking to do, we can help you with in some form or fashion, or I can point you in the right direction. So we encourage you to connect with us, follow us on social media. Also, I'm a big believer in leaders of transformation take action. So something today, maybe it is after you finish listening to this podcast, is that before you go listen to the next one or go answer that phone call or whatever it is that you're planning to do right after, is maybe just be still and just be quiet and do absolutely nothing and just be. Maybe that's the action. Or there's maybe something else that, Udo has said that has piqued your interest, or you thought, I need to get back to that. And you remembered something about what maybe a practice you used to do or something that worked for you. I encourage you, whatever that is, today, not tomorrow, not next week, next year, today, do something to bring yourself back into that presence and bring yourself back into that awareness. And we appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.